And I got involved in precious metals back in the early 2000s. And I had connected with Chris Waltzik at Gold Seek Radio. And and they'd only been on like about a year and a half at the time. And at that juncture, he did a quick interview with me. I thought it was going to be kind of just a quick puff piece, but just about my watching habits and listening habits. But it turned into more than that. That initial interview was like 20, 30 minutes. And I realized actually how much I knew about the gold market back then. And so he asked me, hey, would you be willing to do like a weekly installment for us?
The Financial Survival Network. Now more than ever. The Financial Survival Network.
And welcome. You are listening to and watching the Financial Survival Network. I'm your host, Kerry Lutz. Well, special guest with us now, somebody who I've put on a number of events with, interviewed on the show over and over again. He took a hiatus, but he is back now. Robert Ian is with us. Make sure you go to his site, conquerchange.com. Later on, he's got a special offer for you. And if you got a question for Robert or myself, just shoot me an email, kl@kerrylutz.com. Robert, hey, our audience, 13 years of commentaries you did, an analysis for Gold Seek Radio. Just to tell us how that happened and where it's at now.
Oh, yeah. Well, if you go back to 2007, first of all, your audience probably knows or maybe remembers. My background is as a business and motivational speaker. So since my 20s, I've been speaking to major corporations at sales meetings and things like that. My focus has always been on change management, conquering change. And I got involved in precious metals back in the early 2000s. And I had connected with Chris Waltzik at Gold Seek Radio. And and they'd only been on like about a year and a half at the time. And at that juncture, he did a quick interview with me. I thought it was going to be kind of just a quick puff piece, but just about my watching habits and listening habits. But it turned into more than that. That initial interview was like 20, 30 minutes. And I realized actually how much I knew about the gold market back then. And so he asked me, hey, would you be willing to do like a weekly installment for us? And I was headed to the New Orleans Investment Conference in 2007. That was also the year I became president of the National Speakers Association, my trade group in Wisconsin at the state level. And I had a choice to go to the national conference and get indoctrinated, or I had a choice to go to the New Orleans Investment Conference. Well, I chose the latter, and that was great. And I did commentaries pretty much every Friday for 13 years on Gold Seek on all the topics that we know and speak about.
So that went on from, I guess, 2007 to 2020. And it's a funny thing because your commentaries and stuff with Chris Waltzik is what led me to start podcasting in 2010 and 11. And so we really do go back even longer than you know.
Yes.
Okay. So in 2020, you paused your commentaries. What led you to do that? And what's prompted you to re-enter the world of internet radio and podcasting and YouTubing?
Well, a number of things. So, I like a lot of people, I had to kind of walk the talk and deal with my own change, my own conquering of change without getting too personal. My wife of 27 years passed away in 2022, and leading up to that, she had developed kind of a rare combination of ALS and Lyme disease, which is a massive topic in and of itself. So I became her caretaker. I've always kind of worked from home when I'm not on the road and traveling. So she was in nursing her whole year, so she had trained me very well on how to manage her health and everything. So it was a really good time, to focus on that. I never disengaged ever during that period. And ironically, I kind of got out I think it was August 2020 was my last commentary. And that was like 3-4 months before all the YouTube censorship was invoked before the 2020 election. So I missed some of that. And I have to tell you, just for you and everybody else, I have massive respect for everyone who stayed the course and have endured these massive censorship attacks on free speech. Um, so, uh, so I'm really up to speed on everything. Never, like I say, never disengaged. And with Trump entering now for his second term, and the discussion on really where the economy is going. I mean, those changes, things we've been literally talking about, Kerry, for years, for a decade, approaching 2 decades in some topics. A lot of a lot of that is about to hit the fan now, I believe. And I think right now, I think the next 4 years are going to be monumental in terms of economic change and development. I think a lot of the changes people have been hypothesizing about in the gold market, I think we're going to start to see the gears engage on some of that. And it's really ripe. I paused my speaking business that I had been doing for 25 years, during COVID, obviously, and for personal reasons. But I've re-engaged at the corporate level now, and am doing just a whole lot of things. And then we connected literally over Christmas. I was in Florida in West Palm Beach,
Mhm.
so we got together. And you had asked me on several occasions back in like 2017, 18, 19, why don't you also be on my show? And it just, we never quite got the timing right on that. But you convinced me at Christmas time, and now it's March and we're starting, which is great.
And I missed your commentaries. I always found them entertaining and enlightening. There's one I still remember where you were talking about driving through Wisconsin during Christmas time and things just didn't seem right. And, I always felt like something you should be doing. So, speaking of which, so what kind of format we looking at here? What are we going to do together?
Well, as you know, we kind of talked. I'm going to start out with like a once a week installment for Financial Survival Network. It'll be on a myriad of topics. A lot of them gold related, obviously geopolitical related, Bitcoin related, politically related. I mean, ultimately, the umbrella is the economy, and as you know, we have a real leaning and interest in gold and its potential role moving forward. So I'm going to have for you every Friday. We'll be doing, and we'll do the
Great.
first one this week. Probably about my commentaries usually range anywhere from 7 to 10 to 15 minutes long. They're really quick listens, and
Mhm.
often they're just a synopsis of really some of the key drivers that are going on in the economy. I mean, I listen to a lot of your shows. I listen to a lot of your key guests. I listen to other broadcasts. I mean, I stay engaged with a huge number of people personally within the gold and silver market. That has never stopped. And so I'm pretty good at synthesizing, pretty fair speaker. And so I think we'll give a lot of good discussion points and a quick synopsis of where we're at. And like you always say, it's always about what's next, which is your mantra. And I think the dovetailing of those styles, I think, is going to be very successful here on FSN.
Actually, we've updated that. It's on my latest
Yeah.
business card. You haven't seen it. Uh,
Okay.
it's our tagline is now more than ever. Financial.
Now more than ever. Okay, perfect.
So I guess you're going to be having special projects in the coming months and years, and we'll probably have your first commentary out. I hope this week, but if not next.
Yep.
And this is going to be a long, fruitful relationship. I'm in it with you for another 4 years. I think by then I'll probably be at retirement, and I'll be at the Happy Acres home along with our friend
I don't know about that,
president.
Kerry. You're like me. You're not. You got to stay engaged.
Absolutely.
It's about the ideas.
You got it. Hey, so like as far as where you see the country at now, uh, does it matter that Trump's been elected? Is the patient terminal too late stage 4, too late to save? Or is there a possibility of turning this sinking ship around?
There's always a possibility, and I think we're engaging in that now, but not to be blinded to the reality around us. the one thing people always fail to take into account generally is the lag effect. Coming into this new administration, our economy sucked.
Yeah.
And I mean, the inflation that occurred because of all the money that was created during COVID and spent into the economy when people couldn't work and Main Street businesses were closing. I mean, that's a massive driver in the inflation we've been enduring. There's a number of other things as well. Housing, for example. I mean, housing is unsustainable. And
Yes.
when you look at it, I mean, I've never met her or spoken with her. I look forward to doing that at one point. Melody Wright,
Oh,
I followed
sure.
a long time ago, a decade ago. I was looking at all of her work. Brilliant lady, and I followed her organically, and I think she is spot on. I mean, we are seeing pullbacks with builders where, so, and everyone just stayed in the game. Oh, they think the price is going to go up. So there's all this inventory ready to jump out and jump onto the market, which you're seeing now. I'm seeing it locally where I live here in Nevada. And so housing is going to be a big thing. I mean, we're going to maybe see another '08 style housing correction. I think that's
Really?
in the cards. And this is going to absolutely be nothing to do with anything Trump, quote, is doing now. I mean, this stuff has been baked in the cake. I think we're going to just see a tremendous amount of turbulent change. But the main thing is little or no debt. If you can, multiple streams of income and keep your head up and be looking out. I mean, there's a lot of topics that are going to come into play that are really critical. I've noticed, I think a really important litmus test or mile marker, I guess, or is probably a better term to watch. I know Judy Shelton is making the rounds on lots of different programs now. I've watched a number of her interviews, and she's very closely affiliated with the administration. And listening to what she says, and if we're going to do any extrapolating, I think we should do it maybe based on that, because she's actually in and potentially going to be in a position here where the things she's actually talking about and advocating, she may be able to implement. And he tried to get her more involved in his first administration. He was shot
Right.
down. The fact that
Hmm.
she's still here,
She's a
absolutely
smart
yeah,
lady.
brilliant. And she's talking about a gold-backed bond. I mean, this is one of the things she's talking about with a long maturity date. I've
Hmm.
heard several different discussions on that, and that discussion can factor in with all of the other hypotheses. I
All right.
mean, yeah.
So I got a question for you.
Hmm?
Elon Musk, Trump, they're talking audit of Fort Knox.
Yes.
All right. I've done extensive articles on it, interviews, etc. A, is the gold there? B, if it's not there, can they afford to admit that it's not there? Wouldn't that cause a global financial pandemic, the likes of which we've never seen? And C, if it is there, so what?
Correct. I think well, you're an attorney, a recovering attorney, as you call yourself.
America's top.
And in a good deposition, when an attorney questions you, they rarely ask questions they don't already know the answer to.
Yes.
And I think that the same logic applies in this advertising. And you notice that Trump is goading everyone. He's saying, "Oh, we're gonna audit Fort Knox." Musk is talking about it. If you recall, on the day we had the eclipse back in, I think, 2017,
Right.
Mnuchin flew down there and claimed to have at least looked at some of it. And he's
Yes.
out there talking and Xing and tweeting now. So I think that they already know the answer. I mean,
Mhm.
and I think this is going to be used to shift the debate. If the gold hasn't been there, my guess is they've put a lot of it back. If the
Mhm.
gold isn't there, well, then there's going to be an avenue to extrapolate and implement whatever gold-backed policy is needed, and that's going to just make the miners soar. There are multiple outs. It's kind of like when a magician, as you know, I am, does a
Yes.
trick on you. You think you have a free choice, but no matter which of the five choices you had, has a successful outcome and conclusion, but you think you
Yes.
got a free choice. Nobody's got a free choice when it comes to all the variations of what's going to happen with Fort Knox. Trump knows, Mnuchin knows, Shelton probably knows, but I think everyone's going to be really cagey. And I think they're going to use this to unpackage a next level economic agenda. That's, I think, the bottom line.
All right. So I'm going to run something by you, and I'm working on this in the midst of an article about it. Uh, Bitcoin, National Bitcoin Reserve. So if you read, the government supposedly has 211,000 Bitcoins that they confiscated from Ulbricht Silk Road.
Yep.
That 211,000 has been worth up to 22 or 3 billion. And right now it's probably 16 billion. Now, what if the government runs up the price of Bitcoin because we're going to have this reserve? And we've already seen Bitcoin go from like cents on the dollar to 100,000.
Yes.
What if it's 10 million or 20 million per Bitcoin? And then in our strategic reserve, we've got $35 trillion worth of Bitcoin, and we just pay off the debt with Bitcoin.
There could be that could absolutely be a possibility. I'm not going to discount anything. It's the what if game. What if this? What if that? No idea killers in this process.
Mhm.
And so that is definitely a possibility. Keep in mind, Bitcoin, I believe, all along since its inception, has been like the ultimate gold ETF. For the
Yeah.
last 15 years, it has siphoned off investment that should
Oh,
have gone.
yeah, definitely.
If you recall, at our first Liberty Mastermind we did, we had quite a panel. Bitcoin was very young and nubile at that time. I think it was 2014. We did it in Dallas. We had a panel of 6 or 7 very knowledgeable people.
Hmm.
And correct me if I'm wrong. I think, what was it? 21 million Bitcoins is what was created. Is
Yeah,
that?
that's the max.
And if
That's the
you
max.
remember during that panel discussion back then, this was a big topic at the time.
Yes.
It was like a missing 30%, 3 or 4 million of the
Hmm.
Bitcoins no one could account for. Well, that's like a
Right.
pullback. You can manipulate a market with that hidden inventory anytime you want. So I'd be curious. I personally don't know the status of that, and smarter people can probably enlighten us on that, or maybe you know. So I think that the whole Bitcoin idea is possible. I had floated a concept in one of my Gold Seek commentaries probably a decade ago that if we ever went to a quote gold backing to the dollar, it
Hmm.
would be ultimately a psychological gold backing. And I won't go into this now,
Right. I know what you're saying.
non-convertible. But creating the impression or the illusion that we actually have a much more solid paper than we really do. And most everything is psychological nowadays anyhow.
Yes.
And another idea that I had put forth was eventually having you know how there's 2 classes of stock, Kerry, preferred
Yeah.
stock,
A and B. Right. Yeah. Sure.
ordinary stock. So one of the ideas I had floated a long time ago was maybe we'll go to 2 different currencies for the US. One that might be used domestically at home, maybe that one's gold backed. And we keep the dollar maybe for international trades and it diminishes in value. So maybe we'll end up with 2 stocks of the United States, one at home, one
Mhm.
abroad. I don't know which one they back by gold. I think some version of that and all these other things we're talking about, I think are in the mix. We got really creative people working on this behind the scenes, and I think we're going to get surprised just like we were at the introduction of Doge.
All right. Well, hey, Robert, appreciate you coming on. It's great to connect
Fantastic.
with you. I look forward to disseminating your first talk later in the week. And
Fantastic.
hey, tell us where to find you, how to connect with you on the web.
Yeah, absolutely. You'll be able to, after you can go to conquerchange.com. That will be my website for this. It's new, so it's going to be fresh. One of the things I'll be doing is over the next couple of weeks, I'll be updating that with some of a handful of historical commentaries from each year, kind of tracing the run up to the '08 incident. And then a couple of commentaries each year that really kind of summarize this journey that we've been on economically. Not a ton of historical stuff, but enough to kind of give people that might be new and want to understand the evolution of this conversation. They may find that useful. Also, we've got a lot of people that signed up for my newsletter over the years. I'll be reaching out to them as well. But if you'd just like to make a fresh start and sign up at conquerchange.com, please do that. And you'll be able to sign up for my newsletter now. And the book I published back in the 2000s, it was one of my main keynote speeches called How to Identify, Master, and Conquer Change. If you join the newsletter, you'll get a free copy, a PDF copy of that book. And I'll tell more about that on my site. Definitely worth having. It's a great workbook. And I'll be having an updated version of that book coming out later this year. So lots of activity. And who knows, Kerry, once we get going, maybe you and I will revisit the Liberty Mastermind.
Yeah. Hey,
A lot of good people to get involved now.
I'm game, and I think a lot more people interested than ever before. And Robert, thanks so much for coming on. It's a pleasure reconnecting with you. I'm looking forward to what lies ahead. And I think that big things are happening, big trends, and we're going to be part of it.
We sure are. Thanks, Kerry. Looking forward to it. Be well.
Hey, same here. Hey, if you've got a question or comment for Robert, myself, KL@kerrylutz.com. And you'll find a link to his site in the show notes of this interview on financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Make sure you sign up for your free newsletter, like 70,000 of you have already. Robert, a pleasure. Talk soon.
Thanks, Kerry.